Management teams normally have idea people and they normally have closers. But unless you openly discuss who those people are and then empower both to do what they do well, you always end up in these massive fights because we are not handling the fact that idea people need to do idea things and closers need to do other things. So here are the 10 steps that idea people and closers are involved in implementing any process to change within a company, within government, within anything. Number one, you have to identify the problem or issue. Number two, then you need to brainstorm solutions to that. Number three is you need to come up with a rough concept. So those beginning threes basically are identification, wild thinking that's unlimited, and then finally, roughly how would we try to solve that? That's the first three steps. And you'll find quickly that there's one group that identifies with that very easily. Then the next part of it is step 4, design the task force, designate the leader, come up with the first draft, send the first draft out to a large group for comments and corrections and additions. Then finally have a final draft where you ask for small group comments, and we'll go into each of these steps soon. And then you train and implement, and then my favorite step is you do initial modifications. This is where no process ever developed in the history of mankind has ever worked out of the box. You need to figure out what's working, then you need to modify, and you need to move forward from there. So there are the 10 steps to implement any change inside your operation. Ongoing modifications. Oh my gosh, I could talk about this forever because this is so important that every policy, process, and form should be reviewed and modified at least every 2 years. For a new process or form, it should be reviewed every 6 months until it is 2 years old. And here's why. In the third bullet, changing a policy, process, or form allows you to retrain everybody without saying to your experienced staff, well, I need to train you again on this since you forgot the initial training or just bored with the form or process. And I'm going to go back and tell a great story about that in a second, but I want to put the last bullet in. Many great processes and forms are scrapped because the first year modifications were not done. It runs into trouble, there are problems, and people get frustrated and say, okay, that's it, we're not going to use that process anymore. The process wasn't the problem, the form wasn't the process. You need to do first year modifications to work the bugs out. It's a very simple concept, but you wouldn't believe how many companies I walk into and they started a really great process and then they got rid of it because, well, there were problems. And my response is, of course there are problems. There's never been anything I've implemented that didn't have problems out of the box. But 75 to 80% of it worked. Now we just need to define 15 to 20%. Okay, I've been sent a question, which is, what if I don't know if I'm an idea person or a closer? I think I could be either. All right, that has been a discussion over time when I've been inside companies. And I always ask them to do this. We'll go to the chart. It makes it easier. Which of those things really are fun for you? Which of those things that don't match who you are? And the funny part is, if there are multiple people in the room, the management team, I'll ask, are you a detail person? And if I once had a person say, well, yeah, I'm a detail person. And I said, well, do you meet timelines all the time? Well, yeah, I meet timelines. And the entire management team started laughing, because that person never was into details and never met timelines, even though they thought they were. I said, now, when it comes to brainstorming, are you the one that's usually coming up with off-the-wall ideas and stuff? And The person said, well, yeah, I am that person. And then everybody in the room said, yeah, they are that person. I'm going, well, that's because you're an idea person. So bottom line is there's a process to implement everything that involves 10 steps that none of them can be skipped. We need to openly know who the idea people and closers are. We need to sanction idea people early. We need to sanction closers late. And then we need to build task force and leadership that have the right mixture.